Hello everyone, welcome back to Oneg Shabbat. This Parashat, Bezrat Hashem, we will talk about Parashat Chukat. Parashat Chukat is a fascinating parasha because without even noticing, we've moved 40 years forward, almost 40 years. Parashat Koch, we're talking about the generation of Yotzei Mitzrayim, the generation that were condemned to death in Parashat Shlach to not come into Eretz Yisrael. They had to wander the desert for 40 years, waiting for their Gzal Din, waiting for them to be done. And now, suddenly, without even noticing, it said in פרק כ' ויבואו בני ישראל כל אדם מדבר צין בחודש הראשון וישב העם בקדש. This was already in the 40th year, so it's right, we're very, very close to the entrance to Eretz Yisrael. That's when we moved on to the next stage of Yetziat Mitzrayim, to having Yetziat Mitzrayim, Asherat Shechina, the first generation. The second generation were preparing for entrance to Eretz Yisrael. Maybe you could explain to us why the Parasha starts with Dinei Parah Aduma, with the dinim of death, to symbolize the death of the first generation. What I want to talk about today is the difference between the first generation and the second generation, and why the second generation succeeded and actually were able to enter Eretz Yisrael, whereas the first generation, as we said, were condemned to death. As we see, the second generation starts with just about the same. They go to Kadesh, they go to fight against Edom. Moshe leads the way. וישלח in פרק כ' פסוק י"ד, וישלח משה מלאכים מקדש אל מלך אדום. They say to go, it doesn't work. מלך אדום said do not come. וימאן אדום ואת ישראל מעלה, בפסוק כ"א. Now suddenly, after Moshe's death, we see things change. After Aharon's death, we see things change. Aharon goes up the Hor, he is replaced by his son Elazar, and suddenly we see something completely different. In פרק כ"א we see another war. וישמע כנעני מלך ערד יושב בנגב, כי בא ישראל דרך האתרים, ויילחם בישראל ואיש ממנו שבי. But suddenly, who leads the way is not Moshe. וידע ישראל עדר לאדוני ויאמר, נתון תיתן את העם הזה בידי והחרמתי את עריהם. We see Am Yisrael taking the initiative. The second generation is not like the first generation. The first generation were always passive, we're always past Moshe, we're behind Moshe's leadership. The second generation is able to take the step forward and not only be passive, but also take a step and become active. There we see, afterwards, we see this in another war. It says in פסוק כ"א, וישלח ישראל מלאכים לסיחון מלך האמורי לאמור. פרק כ"א פסוק כ"א, and that we can compare that to what we saw just previous, but וישלח משה מלאכים מקדש אל מלך אדום. Moshe is the one sending מלאכים to מלך אדום. Just a little bit later, the same generation, וישלח ישראל מלאכים לסיחון מלך האמורי לאמור. Now Am Yisrael are the ones taking charge. Am Yisrael becoming active. I think we can see the context of this is a bit beforehand. In פרק כ"א פסוק י"ז, אז ישיר ישראל את השירה הזאת עלי באר ענולה. We see a beautiful song about the באר, באר חפרו השרים, קרון דברי העם. What do we care about this shira? Why is it critical? Every shira we have in the Tanakh that within the stories come to teach us something. Shirat Hayam comes to show us a different aspect of Kirat Yam Suf, Shirat David, B'Yom HaKoto, or Kinat David, about David ve'Yonatan and Shmuel Aleph, all discuss something within the story. What does this shira have to do with anything? We see that there is water in Chazal. Learn from here the kesher between the water and between the death of Miriam. We've seen all this before, but what's the point of this shira? I think the koteret, the introduction to this shira, is the important part. It says, Az Yashir Yisrael et hashira azot. Who sings this song? Yisrael. Az Yashir Yisrael. If we compare that to Kriyat Yam Suf, there we had Az Yashir Moshe u'bnei Yisrael. Chazal discussed how exactly did they repeat what Moshe said, or did Moshe say one line and they said the other. The shira was led by Moshe and Am Yisrael followed. And that is exactly what we see in the first generation. It's different in the second generation. The first generation are a generation of Avadim. They don't know how to initiate. They know how to follow. They know how to do what they are told as long as they have the basic necessities. As long as they know Pitam, Besalam, as we see in the Man. And they want to have the water. They want to have everything close by. They're very difficult for them to live life in a way that they can't have exactly what they have right now and have that assurance that they want, and they're not able to initiate. The second generation is the tikkun. The second generation aren't just the first generation is gone and now we can enter Eretz Yisrael. The second generation, the point is to succeed where the first one failed. In order for that to happen, we have to have a significant change. The second generation grew up as Bnei Chorin. Not only did they grow up as Bnei Chorin, they grew up in the desert. Makom Nachash, Tiyah, Ve'akrav. They grew up as strong men, as people who are willing to move, willing to initiate. We see them replacing Moshe, Mamash Kacha. We see them in war. We see them doing nedarim. We see them sending malachim, working diplomacy. We see them afterwards with the songs. We see it all over. Obviously, Moshe still has a part. Moshe is still the leader. But the fact that there's a leader doesn't mean the Am has to sit quietly. The Am is meant to be active, is meant to initiate, is meant to act as nechorim, and that is what enables the second generation to enter Eretz Yisrael successfully eventually. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.